This video is sponsored by Squarespace. From websites and online stores to marketing tools and analytics, build your online presence with Squarespace.
Hey everyone, Ace of Clay here. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome to another sculpting video. Today we're making a baby Grim Reaper. So if you've ever wondered what the Grim Reaper looked like as a child, then this is the video for you. And then if you're new here, be sure to subscribe and like this video and then turn notifications on so that you know every time I upload a future video. And without further ado, let's get started. All right, here we go. First step, armature. I'm just gonna use this thick aluminum wire to shape out the torso and one sort of snake for the legs because this will be wearing a robe. I don't need to make individual legs. Now I'm measuring the arms out, and I'm going to cut those and attach them with some floral wire. And then this one ends up being a little too thick, so I go back and redo it with some of my normal 12 gauge aluminum wire. And as always, all of the materials and tools that I use in this video are listed in the description box below, along with my affiliate links if you want to purchase anything. And here I'm just redoing everything. For a small sculpt like this, that wire was just a little too thick for me. It was a lot harder to work with, so I figured it would just be easier to just start over and not have to deal with any problems down the road. That's looking much better. Now for some ultralight. Here's some ASMR ultralight. Wow, okay, so I'm just using some Sculpey ultralight to shape out the underlying structure of the figure. And I won't be using any aluminum foil on this. One, because it's a smaller figure, and two, I'd rather just use ultralight. So here I'm just shaping out the torso and bottom of his robes. And I am keeping in mind the anatomy of a toddler versus an adult. They're a little more, short and squat, if you will. Now we're going to bake that, and then once it's baked, it's time to cover the entire thing in some Super Sculpey Original. If you've been watching my channel for a while, this step should be pretty familiar to you. I'm just using some snakes of clay to create some folds and wrinkles on the robes. So what I'm doing is I'm just rolling out a snake of clay that tapers at each end, and I'm blending both sides of it into the sculpture after it's been applied. And if you want to try this yourself, just make sure you keep in mind gravity when you're doing this. You don't want to put on any folds that don't make sense because then your sculpture is going to look kind of awkward. So my best advice for you if you want to try this is to take like a blanket or a sheet, throw it over a chair, and use that as reference. Like see how the folds and everything fall towards the ground. That's what I'm doing here. I want it to make sense and I don't want it to look awkward. So let's cover the entire thing in some folds and wrinkles. Now I just want to bring out the end of the ropes here in the back a little bit more, so I'm just adding some more clay, and then we're going to cover this in wrinkles too. Not bad. Our baby Grim Reaper is ready for the first bake. And then once he's baked and completely cooled down, let's do a quick inspection and set him to the side and start his head. I'm just shaping out the core of his head, or the skull, with some aluminum foil, and then I'm going to cover that in clay. Once I have the skull to the size and shape that I want, I'm just pressing it onto the neck to create that hole, inserting another piece of wire so I can hold this when I add detail, and now I'm creating the mandible from a snake of clay. And I want this to be a very, very stylized skull, and just figure in general, but I still want him to look like a younger version of my adult Grim Reaper, or even like the son of my adult Grim Reaper. So I don't know, I just want to keep that in mind when I'm doing this. I want it to be very geometric and simple, but still detailed, if that makes sense. Then once that jaw is on, I'm just going to use my large ball stylus to press out some pretty big and wide set eye sockets. Now I'm going to take a tiny piece of clay and give him a little nasal bone. Now I'm going to take my Explorer tool to press out the teeth. Then I'm going to deepen this line with a wedge color shaper and then press out the space in between each tooth. Alright, now we're going to go in with a very tiny ball stylus and press out the nose hole. And I understand this is not a very scientific name, but it gets my point across. Now let's make those eye sockets a little bit bigger, and then let's brush the entire thing with clay softener to remove fingerprints, and then we're going to pre-bake this. Now for the next step, so I can pre-bake this with the skull, I'm going to create a little lollipop. I'll put this in his hand in place of a scythe. Then for the handle, or the stick, I'm just using a toothpick and then pulling it out to add some bacon bond to that hole and then stick it back in. Now while the head and lollipop are baking, we're going to start the arms. And this is my first version of his right arm, and I thought I was going to do this sort of like oversized robe thing where like the sleeves are too long for his arms, but I decided that wasn't the way I wanted to go. So I ended up just taking that off. Right here. Alright, let's try that again. Instead of making this arm just completely straight, I'm going to give it a little bit of a bend so that it looks a little more dynamic. And then before we add some long sleeves, let's make some tiny little baby skeleton hands. And we're just going to stick the hand on and then follow this by adding the sleeve. And now that arm is looking pretty good. And now once the skull and the lollipop are fresh out of the oven and completely cooled down, we're going to attach the lollipop by wrapping the wire around the stick and then adding the hand on top of that. And the next step is to add the sleeve. Alright, now I'm going to attach the head, and then this is where I realize I can't have that lollipop there while I do the hood, so we're going to take the lollipop out very carefully. And it breaks. Don't buy toothpicks from the dollar store, they're really cheap. There is a difference between toothpicks, I promise you. Alright, now I'm just going to cut out the hood for our little guy here, and I realized that it's easier to attach this if the head is not connected to the body, so I'm doing that right here, and I'm just sort of shaping it around his face and then gathering it in the back and bringing it to a point. Had I known that I would have to add the hood while the head's not connected, I probably wouldn't have tried to take the lollipop out, and it never would have broke, and it would have saved me some time, but whatever, at least it wasn't a super complicated piece that broke. Now here's lollipop take 2, but this time with an aluminum wire stick, not a toothpick one. Now, just like I did with the rest of his robes, whether I mentioned it or not, I'm going to roll the textured edge of a sculpting tool on the surface to create a nice little fabric texture. And there we go. He's ready for his final bake. And once he's baked and completely cooled down, let's pray that he doesn't break while I'm painting him with my Folk Art brand matte acrylics. We're going to start with his skull. I'm using some tapioca mixed with a little bit of brown. And don't forget, you can always blow dry your paint in between coats to speed up the drying process. And now using some watered down light brown, I'm just going into the mouth area and the spaces in between each tooth. Now it's time to paint the eye sockets black. I'm doing this very slowly and very carefully using a very fine paintbrush. And now for the next step, we're going to paint his robes black. And as you can see, for the areas that are up against another color, I am using a fine paintbrush to get into those, and then I'm going over everything else with a larger one. I probably could have used black clay for the hood, not gonna lie. Now I'm dry brushing some dark gray on the surface to bring out the texture of the robes. Now I'm going to paint his lollipop. I started with white, but I decided I don't want it to be a black and white lollipop. I want to do a red one, so just paint it red. This is Imperial Red mixed with brown and black. Then once that's dry, I'm going in with some lighter red or orange and lightening the center. Now for the fun part, using a very fine paintbrush, I'm creating a creepy, jaggedy swirly in the center of the lollipop. I really like how this turned out. And let's do it on the back now. And next we're just going to paint the lollipop stick gray. And then glaze the lollipop with some glossy varnish. And he's done! The Baby Grim Reaper is complete. Let me know what you think in the comments, and then let me know if you want to see me make any of my other characters into babies. I could easily make this into a series, so let me know. And that's a wrap. I really hope you liked the Baby Grim Reaper. Let me know what you think in the comments. I think he turned out really cute and he looks exactly how I pictured him in my head, and I think he makes a pretty good addition to the monster universe. And then before we wrap up here, let's talk about our sponsor, Squarespace. Whether you're just getting started or you're an established brand, the Squarespace commerce platform supports the way you do business. Whether you want to sell products directly or even bill for your services, they have everything you need. For me personally, I love Squarespace for their portfolios. I'm constantly updating my website every week with more photos of my work. I love how customizable the templates are, and I love how easy it is to use them. And I also want to mention their amazing email support team that is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. My favorite part about this is that they're an actual team in an office, and they'll typically respond to your questions within an hour. So with all that said, if you're ready to start a new website, go to squarespace.com to start your free trial, and then when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/aceofclay to save 10% on your first purchase. And as always, thank you so much for watching and being here. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and then follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter @aceofclay. I'm also on TikTok, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.